Hi everyone, it's Debbie Jackson. So yesterday we talked about what to do when you're a parent and your child comes to you, child, teenager, even as an adult. A lot of people pointed out that this can apply to adult children as well. What to do when your kids come out to you and you have a hard time accepting it. So now that we've passed that moment and you think that you're ready to be on board, let's talk about what it means to be a good ally for your child. So first, what you need to realize is that gender identity is a spectrum. It's not a binary. So when you have a child come to you and say, I really, you thought that I was female, I was assigned female at birth, but I'm male, don't try to replace one checkbox with another. And by that I mean, don't assume that a trans male is suddenly going to want to go out hunting and be interested in trucks and be interested in sports and beer and that sort of thing. Because really, those are just gender stereotypes, and a lot of it is gender expression. So after that, you want to recognize that sometimes there's a lot of fluidity in our gender identity, and you may have a hard time understanding it. A lot of people have a hard time understanding it, and a lot of trans people themselves have a hard time articulating. You could be gender queer, you could be gender fluid, and you could be agender. So just because we have the standard male-female concept in our heads doesn't mean that everyone's going to fit into that. There are people who feel 60-40 one way, and for their gender identity they don't necessarily want to be called male or female. They're somewhere in between. And there are people who think that none of our concepts of male and female really fit how they feel that they are themselves. So they might consider themselves agender. None of our genders really fit for them. They just don't feel right. So we need to get past the idea that gender is a binary and respect wherever your child puts themselves on the spectrum, because it really is a spectrum. Going from there, the next step is to use your child's preferred name and pronouns. Now, this one can be hard. A lot of people, for names in particular, if this is your child and not just a relative, a friend, or whatever, there's something really personal about the naming process. I mean, we spend a whole lot of time working on the name that's going to fit right with the family name, and maybe it had something to do with a relative or someone that meant a lot to us in our lives, and we named our child after them in an honor. That's great, but that was what you did. That was the identity you wanted for your child to have, and it doesn't necessarily fit your child. I mean, how many of us have wanted to rename ourselves at some point because we didn't think our name fit? I know I certainly did. And if my identity was tied into a name that never really felt right for me, I would certainly want to have another name picked out. If your child has already picked out a name, respect that. And if they haven't, maybe this is a process that you can go through together. You can talk about family names. You can talk about the names that you had in mind if they had been born a different gender. And this can be a bonding process that you can go through together of coming up with a new name. So don't take it personally. Remember, none of this is about you. All of it is about your child. So try to take those personal feelings and put them to the side. Same thing with pronouns. A lot of people come back and say, well, it's just a habit. It's really hard to break those pronoun rules. I've been so used to them forever. It's not. It's a little word to you, but to that person, it's everything. It means respect. It means acceptance. So they might want male or female pronouns. They might want new pronouns, new to you, zer or z, and they might just want to be called they. And that's okay. Don't worry about grammar rules. People get hung up on grammar rules. Again, we're talking about respect, about a person's identity. None of those other little details matter as much as showing that person that you see them for the person that they are. Next, advocate for your child. Now that you've come to terms with everything and you feel that, okay, I'm on board with this, you need to advocate for your child. Your child can't go through this all by themselves, and that might mean sticking up for them at school. That might mean talking to a doctor and making sure that they know to use preferred names and pronouns and put that in the child's files. So there are ways that you can advocate for your child even when you're still learning and struggling for yourself. I'm not talking about going to political rallies and rah, rah, rah and doing all that stuff yet. I'm just talking about the simple day-to-day stuff. Transphobic jokes on Facebook, transphobic comments around the water cooler at work. There are ways that you can stand up for your child and the trans community as a whole that will show your child that you respect them. Another way is to make sure that you use your child's correct name and pronouns when they're not even in the room. To really show that you respect them, it's not enough to do it face to face. It's doing it when they're not around to catch you. I mean, that's really when things kind of come together, when you are able to put your own feelings aside and say, this is who my child is, and I'm going to identify them in every conversation that I have. But on that note, another really big issue is don't out your child if they're not ready to be outed. Being outed as a trans person can be dangerous, and coming out is a point of pride in part of the LGBT community. You're there saying, I'm not ashamed of who I am, this is about who I love, and there isn't the sense of impending danger that there is for a trans person being outed. There are definitely discriminatory issues for the entire LGBTQ community, but for a trans person, being outed can be physically dangerous to them. So this is somewhere that you need to actually talk to your child. They might not want you talking about them on social media. They might not want you talking about them at work. They might just prefer that you're discreet in taking down any mentions of your kids at all for a little while, or that you might take the family photos off your office desk and put them away for a little while until they can figure out how safe they feel and where they want to be out and when. It's really, again, not about you. This is about your child. This is about another person's identity and another person's life. So leave these kinds of decisions up to them. And then finally, this can be a hard process. I know, having gone through it, and I know from hundreds and hundreds of friends and people that I've met now that have gone through it, this can be a hard process. And it can feel like you have lost your child. It can feel like you no longer know the person that you have been raising all of these years. A lot of people go through a mourning process. They feel like their child has died, something has died. Please do not cry in front of your kids. Don't do it. When you do that, it can be devastating to your kid. It can be devastating because they are still alive, and to them this is a moment of rebirth. This is a moment of regeneration. This is the phoenix rising. The person that everyone thought that they were, the acting that they had to do every day just to get by and survive, they're putting that behind them, and they're trying to embrace who they really are. They're trying to show you who they really are, and they're wanting you to get to see them truly for the very first time. So to have you crying and saying that you feel like they are dead can be emotionally devastating. Please don't do that. If you have to go through that, let that be a mourning process that you do in private, and in front of your kids, put on a strong face. Fake it until you make it is what we say, and it really does help. It's going to make a big difference to your kid. It's going to make a huge difference in your relationship, and it's going to let them see that even though the ideas that you had about them and about their life have changed, they are still there, and you recognize it, and you love them, and you're going to support them because they are starting a new life, and you should be there to celebrate that life. Allyship can be tricky. It can be a little bit of a struggle, but put your child's needs ahead of your own, and it's all going to work out okay.